My own brother looked me dead in the eye and told me I wasn't family anymore. That's when I dropped the $430,000 house deed on the table and told them all to get out. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Arya. I'm 32 years old, and I've worked most of my adult life as a nurse. Long shifts, nights, weekends, missed birthdays, missed holidays. It's all I've ever known. I didn't mind, because I always told myself I was working for something bigger than myself. After our parents died, it was just me and my younger brother, Jackson. He was only 29 now, but even as a kid, he had this way of making people believe in him. Charming, smooth, always knowing how to get what he wanted. People thought he was golden, but I knew the side that came out when things didn't go his way. I wasn't bitter about it at first. When our parents passed, I stepped into the role of caretaker. I took on double shifts to cover bills, kept food on the table, and made sure Jackson finished school. While he was out living his life, I was working myself to exhaustion, thinking I was doing the right thing. My friends used to ask why I never took vacations, why I never dated seriously, and my answer was always the same. My brother needs me. That became my life motto. So when I finally saved enough money to buy a house, $430,000, all mine, I thought it was the start of something new. It wasn't just a house to me. It was proof that all those years of sacrifice had paid off. A place that felt stable, something our parents would have been proud of. But the moment I moved in, Jackson and his wife Samantha were already circling. They said they needed a little time to get on their feet. Just a few months, they promised. I wanted to believe them. Jackson had this way of looking at me that made me forget every time he had let me down before. And Samantha, well, she had a sharp tongue, but I thought maybe she just needed time to warm up to me. She smiled when it suited her, but most days she walked around like the house belonged to her. She called it our place more times than I could count, even though she hadn't paid a dime toward it. I told myself to let it go. After all, I had room, and they were family. Family meant something to me. I kept repeating that to myself when Samantha made little digs about how I worked too much, and how it was sad that I was still single. I stayed quiet, thinking it was better not to fight. I thought if I gave them enough time, enough space, they'd eventually respect me and the roof I put over their heads. But I was wrong. They weren't guests who needed a little help. They were squatters who thought they had found someone they could drain forever. And I was about to learn just how far their entitlement would go. When I look back, it feels like my whole life was built around keeping Jackson afloat. I was the one who paid for his college. While he went to classes and partied with his friends, I was clocking in double shifts at the hospital, counting every dollar to make sure his tuition was covered. I told myself it was an investment in his future, even if it meant putting my own future on hold. It didn't stop there. Jackson had a way of getting into money trouble. Credit cards, late bills, loans he couldn't handle. It always landed in my lap. I'd get a call, hear the panic in his voice, and before I knew it, I was moving my own paycheck around to cover whatever mistake he'd made. Sometimes that meant skipping out on things I needed, but I couldn't stand the idea of watching him fail. Each time, I swore it was the last. Each time, I gave in again. When he got engaged to Samantha, I thought things might finally change. Maybe having a partner would make him grow up. But when the wedding came, I was still the one reaching for my checkbook. I covered part of the cost so they could have the celebration they wanted. I sat there in the back while everyone cheered for the happy couple, smiling through the ache in my chest. No one knew that while they toasted champagne, I was calculating how long it would take to rebuild the money I had just handed over. To everyone else in the family, Jackson was always the golden one. The funny one, the charmer, the man with endless potential. Relatives clapped him on the back, proud of how he carried himself. Me, I was just the dependable sister, the caretaker, the one they could always count on to fix things quietly in the background. They praised me for being responsible, as if that word could fill the emptiness of always coming second. Samantha only made it worse. She never respected what I'd done for them. Instead, she picked at me in ways that were hard to ignore. She would smirk and say it was sad I was still single. She would point out that I didn't have kids, like it made me less of a woman. Once, she even said I didn't really have a family of my own. I swallowed it every time, telling myself not to cause trouble. For me, family was supposed to mean something. That's why I kept quiet, why I let the words slide off my back. No matter how ungrateful they were, no matter how sharp Samantha's tongue was, I held on to the belief that family came first. That belief kept me going, long after it should have broken me. It started small, little comments that I didn't think much of at first. Jackson would walk around the house, looking at the walls, the yard, the furniture, and say things like, "You know, we should make this place ours. You should put my name on the deed. That way it really stays in the family." He said it so casually, as if it was the most natural request in the world. I laughed it off at first, thinking he was joking, but the more he said it, the less it sounded like a joke. Then came his so-called business ideas. One week he wanted to start a car detailing company, the next week it was a food truck, and after that, something about selling imported shoes. Each time, he sat at my table with big dreams and no money. He would slide his plans toward me, waiting for me to open my wallet. When I told him I couldn't keep giving him money, he would act offended, like I was being selfish. He reminded me of all the times I had helped him before, as if that was proof I should keep doing it forever. Samantha didn't make things easier. Before long, she was treating my house like it belonged to her. She changed the curtains without asking, moved my furniture around, and filled the kitchen with things I never bought. She had friends over constantly, laughing and drinking late into the night while I tried to rest before an early shift. Sometimes I would come home from work and find strangers in the living room, feet on my coffee table, acting like they owned the place. Samantha would just smile and say, "Relax, we're making the house more lively." The worst part was how quickly I began to feel like I was the outsider. Samantha walked through the rooms giving orders, and Jackson followed along as if I wasn't even there. They claimed the master bedroom without a second thought, leaving me with the smaller room in the back. I kept telling myself it was temporary, but the way they acted told me they believed it was permanent. One night, after I told Jackson I couldn't lend him more money for his latest idea, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Come on, Arya. We're family. What's yours is ours." He said it so easily, like it was a fact, not even something worth questioning. I stared at him across the table, realizing in that moment he didn't see me as his sister anymore. He saw me as his safety net. That was when it started to sink in. All those years of sacrifice hadn't taught him gratitude. They had only taught him to expect more. No matter what I gave, it would never be enough, because in his eyes, he was entitled to everything I had. For the first time, I began to wonder if keeping quiet had only made things worse. Dinner had started out in a way that felt almost normal. Some cousins had come over, and everyone agreed my place was the easiest spot to gather. I had spent most of the afternoon cooking, setting the table, and making sure everything looked right. By the time the guests arrived, I was tired, but I pushed that aside. I wanted it to feel welcoming, like a real family gathering. For the first hour or so, it worked. People swapped old stories, laughed about childhood memories, and passed food around the table. Jackson planted himself at the head like it was his house, cracking jokes and soaking up the attention. I let him have it, as I always did. It wasn't worth the fight. Then, out of nowhere, he leaned back in his chair with a smirk I knew too well. Loud enough for everyone to hear, he said, "Arya isn't really family. She's just the person who pays for things." The table went still. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. For a second, I thought maybe he was joking badly, but the grin on his face told me he meant every word. Samantha let out a loud laugh, clapping her hands like it was the best punchline of, "Oh my God, that's perfect," she said, still laughing, her voice cutting through me like glass. Some cousins chuckled softly, unsure if they should follow Samantha's lead. Others kept their eyes down, busying themselves with food, as though staring at their plates would make them invisible. The air felt heavier by the second, the kind of silence that no one wants to break. I sat there frozen. The years I had worked for him, the money I had poured into his life, the endless support, all of it tossed aside with one cruel line. To him, I wasn't a sister, not someone who had carried him through hard times. I was just a wallet with a seat at the table. My face grew hot, but I forced myself to stay calm. I didn't want to give him or Samantha the satisfaction of seeing me crack. I lifted my glass and took a slow sip, just to keep my hands from shaking. Around me, the conversation stumbled back to life, someone nervously switching to another topic, but nothing felt the same. Every laugh after that sounded forced, every smile false. I kept quiet through the rest of the meal, nodding when people spoke, chewing food I could barely swallow. On the surface, I looked composed, but inside something had shifted. The line I never thought I'd reach had been crossed. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was starting to feel something colder, something sharper, building deep within me. I can still remember the day I signed the papers for the house. It didn't feel real at first. After so many years of long nights at the hospital, extra weekend shifts, and picking up side work whenever I could, I had finally done it. I bought the house outright, $430,000, all from my own savings. No loan hanging over me, no one else tied to it, just mine. The path to that moment had been exhausting. I worked nights that stretched into mornings, sometimes grabbing only a few hours of sleep before heading back in. My friends told me I was pushing myself too hard, but I couldn't stop. Every time I wanted to quit, I pictured my parents and how much they had wanted a home of their own. I wanted to carry that dream forward, not just for me, but for the memory of what they sacrificed. So, I kept grinding away, paycheck after paycheck, until the goal was finally in reach. When the keys were dropped into my hand, I felt proud. For once, I had something that proved my effort mattered. Every sacrifice, every lonely night, every skipped vacation had built up to that moment. The deed had only one name on it. Jackson wasn't part of it. Samantha wasn't part of it. No one but me had paid a single cent toward this place. And yet, when they asked to move in, I didn't think twice. Jackson said they just needed a little time, that they were trying to get on their feet. I remembered how our parents raised us to stick together, how they had told me to always look out for my little brother. So, I opened the door. I told myself it was temporary. I believed it was the right thing to do, because family was supposed to come first. But sitting at that dinner table, hearing him say I wasn't really family, everything inside me shifted. That one sentence cut through all the excuses I had made for him over the years. He didn't see the years of sweat and sacrifice that went into this home. He didn't see the pride I felt in creating something stable after so much loss. To him, none of it mattered. For the first time, I stopped seeing myself as the older sister who had to carry everyone. I stopped seeing the house as something we were sharing. It wasn't his. It was never his. I had been walked over for years, letting him and Samantha treat my effort like it was nothing. But now, I couldn't unhear his words. He had told me I wasn't family, and if that was how he saw me, then he had no right to live under my roof. The house was mine alone, and it was time I started acting. The morning after that dinner, I woke up with a decision already made. I didn't pace the floor or second-guess myself the way I usually did. I just knew. For too long I had let them take advantage of me, and last night's words had burned away whatever patience I had left. I found Jackson and Samantha in the kitchen, sipping coffee like they owned the place. Samantha had her phone in one hand and was scrolling without even looking up. Jackson gave me his usual smirk, the one that always seemed to say he was 2 steps ahead of me. I stood in the doorway for a moment, steadying myself, then spoke. "Pack your things," I said evenly. "You're leaving today." For a second, they both blinked at me like I was speaking another language. Then Jackson chuckled and shook his head. Samantha leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, a smug smile creeping onto her face. "You can't be serious," she said. "You can't kick us out of our own home." Jackson laughed at that, like it was a joke they were both in on. He added, "Yeah, Arya. Come on. Don't be ridiculous." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just turned and walked to the cabinet in the corner of the dining room. I opened the drawer, pulled out the thick folder I had kept there since the day I moved in, and laid it flat on the table. The sound of it hitting the wood was louder than I expected, sharp enough to cut through their laughter. Their smiles faded. Samantha leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she saw the papers inside. Jackson stopped mid-chuckle, his face tightening as he recognized what he was looking at. The deed. My name. No one else's. For a long moment, no one said anything. The air in the room felt heavy. Jackson's mouth opened like he was about to speak, but nothing came out. Samantha's face drained of color as she tried to flip through the pages, searching for something that wasn't there. I stood on the other side of the table and looked straight at them. "You said I wasn't family," I said quietly, but every word carried weight. "Then this house isn't yours." Silence followed. Jackson stared at me, his confidence gone, his jaw tight like he was trying to come up with an excuse. Samantha's sneer was gone too, replaced with something closer to panic. For the first time, I felt no guilt, no hesitation. Just clarity. This was my home, bought with my blood and effort, and they had no claim to it. I had opened my doors because I believed in family. But if they could look me in the face and say I wasn't part of theirs, then they had just lost any right to be here. The moment the papers hit the table, everything shifted. Jackson's smile fell apart, and he started scrambling for words. He reached for his old charm, the same act that had gotten him out of so many situations before. "Arya, come on," he said, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow. "I was joking last night. You know me, I say dumb things sometime. Don't be dramatic. You're really going to throw us out over one little comment." His voice was softer now, careful, like he thought he could smooth this over with the same excuses he had always used. But I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just looked at him, steady and silent, until he realized his words weren't working. That's when Samantha jumped in. She shoved her chair back, her face twisted with anger. "Are you serious, Arya? You're bitter, you're jealous, and honestly, you're pathetic. You've always been this way, acting like a martyr, like you're better than everyone because you work a boring job and save money. No wonder you're alone. Who would want to live with someone like you?" Her words came fast, sharp, each one meant to cut. She wanted me to break, to cry, to back down like I always had. But I didn't. Instead, I took a breath and repeated the very line that had been sitting heavy inside me since the dinner. "Not family," I said slowly, my voice calm but unshakable. "That's what you said." The room went still again. Samantha opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Jackson looked at me like he didn't recognize the person standing in front of him. For once, I wasn't bending. I wasn't softening my tone or offering another chance. I was done. It didn't take long for the phones to start ringing. An aunt called first, her voice full of disappointment. "Arya, he's your brother. You can't just throw him out. Family fights, but you don't put blood on the street." Then a cousin called, saying I was overreacting, that everyone knew Jackson didn't mean it. Another relative told me to be the bigger person, as if I hadn't been the bigger person my entire life. I listened, but I didn't waver. I let them say what they wanted, and when they were finished, I said the same thing each time. He told me I wasn't family. I'm just giving him what he wanted. The more I repeated it, the stronger it felt. For years, I had let their voices drown out mine. But now, for the first time, my words were final. I wasn't going to budge, no matter who tried to guilt me. Jackson and Samantha stared at me like they couldn't believe I was serious. But I was. This time, there would be no backtracking, no forgiveness, no more second chances. I was finished carrying them, and I meant every word. The next morning, I didn't wait for another argument. I made a call, and by noon a moving truck pulled up in front of the house. 2 men stepped out, ready to work. When Jackson and Samantha saw them walking up the driveway, their faces went pale. "What's this?" Jackson asked, his voice tight. "They're here for your things," I said simply. "You're leaving today." At first, they tried to laugh it off, but when the movers started carrying boxes inside, the panic set in. Jackson followed me down the hall, his tone switching from angry to pleading. "Arya, listen. We don't have to do this. I'll change. I'll help with bills. I'll get serious this time. Just give me one more chance." Samantha wasn't begging. She was furious. She stomped from room to room, shouting at the movers not to touch her belongings. Then she turned her anger on me. "You're heartless. You think you're better than us because you bought this house? You'll regret this, Arya. You'll die alone in here, and no one will care." Her words were full of venom, but they slid right past me. Every time Jackson tried to soften me with promises, I remembered all the times I had heard the same words before. Every time Samantha threw an insult, I reminded myself she was only angry because she was losing the comfort she never earned. I refused to be pulled back into their cycle of apologies and anger. The movers worked quickly, carrying out boxes of clothes, furniture, and the little things they had scattered throughout my home. Each piece that left made the rooms feel lighter, like layers of their presence were finally peeling away. Jackson followed them outside, still talking, still trying to convince me. His voice cracked as he said, "Please, Arya, don't do this to me. You're all I have." I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, my voice steady. "You said I wasn't family. You were right. This house is mine, and you have no place here." His shoulders slumped, and he turned away, defeated. Samantha, on the other hand, hurled one last string of curses at me as she climbed into their car, her eyes full of hate. But I didn't flinch. For once, their words had no power. As the moving truck pulled away, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: control. I had spent so long giving, bending, and sacrificing, only to be treated like nothing. But now, watching the driveway clear, I felt powerful. I had taken back what was mine, and no one could twist it away from me again. For the first time, the house felt like it truly belonged to me. It wasn't a burden or a shared space. It was my home, my effort, my reward. And I wasn't going to let anyone take that away. After they left, the house was quiet in a way I had never heard before. No footsteps pounding down the hallway, no voices echoing through the rooms, no slamming doors. At first, the silence felt strange, but then I realized it was peace. Real peace. It didn't take long before the phone calls began again. Jackson wasted no time telling everyone in the family that I had thrown him and Samantha out for no reason. He told them I had turned selfish and forgotten what family means. He painted me as the villain, twisting the story until some people started to believe him. I heard the whispers from cousins. "Arya's cold-hearted. She went too far. She should have forgiven him." None of them knew the years I had spent holding Jackson up, paying his bills, cleaning up his mistakes. None of them had been there when he said I wasn't family. They only heard his side, the one that made me look cruel and him look like a victim. At first, their words stung. I had always cared too much about what people thought, especially family. But as the days passed, I stopped reaching for the phone. I stopped explaining myself. The truth was simple. My home was mine, my work had paid for it, and no one else had the right to claim it. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to justify that to anyone. Each evening when I came back from work, I unlocked the door and stepped into a house that was finally mine alone. No tension waiting for me, no voices criticizing me, no demands hanging in the air. Just quiet rooms and space that belonged fully to me. I breathed easier with every day that passed. I started taking small steps to make the house feel like my own again. I painted over the colors Samantha had chosen, rearranged the furniture back to how I liked it, and filled the kitchen with food I actually enjoyed. These small changes felt like pieces of myself returning, pieces I had lost while trying to keep everyone else happy. Nights were the best. I could sit on the couch without hearing Samantha's laughter or Jackson's voice asking for money. I could read, watch a show, or simply sit in silence without feeling like a stranger in my own home. That silence healed me. Life moved slowly but steadily forward. Jackson no longer called, and I didn't chase after him. If he wanted to see me as the enemy, that was his choice. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty about letting him go. I didn't feel the weight of carrying his problems anymore. The house was mine, the peace was mine, and at last my life was mine too. For most of my life, I believed that family meant giving without limit. I thought if I kept sacrificing, if I kept showing up, then love and respect would follow. I gave Jackson everything I could: time, money, energy, even pieces of myself I'll never get back. I carried him through school, through debts, through his wedding, and finally into a house he never earned. I kept telling myself it was worth it, because he was my brother, and family comes first. But standing in my quiet home now, I see things more clearly. Family isn't about giving until you're empty. It isn't about being taken advantage of while smiling through the pain. Family should be built on respect, care, and honesty. Without those things, the word means nothing. Jackson and Samantha showed me who they really were. To them, I wasn't a sister or a person with my own needs. I was a bank account, a safety net, a house they could claim as theirs. They laughed at my sacrifices and mocked me for being alone, all while living under a roof my hands had built. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as a wallet. The night Jackson looked me in the eye and said I wasn't family, something inside me broke, but it also woke up. I realized he had been showing me that truth for years. I just refused to see it. Those words cut me, but they also freed me. Now, as I walk through each room, I feel a weight lifting off me. The walls no longer echo with insults or fake laughter. This house is no longer a cage. It's a home. Mine. Every dollar, every shift, every sleepless night I worked to buy it, it all belongs here. And finally, so do I. I don't regret helping my brother. What I regret is losing myself in the process. But I've learned. I've learned that loyalty without respect is just slavery. I've learned that love without gratitude is empty. And I've learned that sometimes, family isn't who shares your blood, but who treats you with kindness. I gave Jackson every chance, and he chose to throw it away. He told me I wasn't family, and in the end, he was right. Because real family doesn't use you. Real family doesn't belittle you. Real family doesn't spit on the very hand that held them up. I look at the deed resting in my hands, heavy but solid, proof of everything I worked for. My brother told me I wasn't family. He was right, because real family doesn't treat you like that. And the $430,000 deed in my hands was proof.